Adam began to crawl. He was feeble and slow, but making headway. Around him, his parents clapped in praise. He fell backwards onto his butt as he saw something in the window. In the dark of night, he saw what looked like a baby's face. He let out a cry and pointed, but his parents just rushed to his side. Neither looked towards the window. Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide, Jason. Today, we are looking at 3 creatures, the Botchling, Poroniec, and Myling. Let's see why these babies were feared. Let's start with the Botchling, called Poroniec in Polish. The Botchling has several other names, Myling or Mylingar in some Slavic regions. It appears as a baby, but disfigured and misshapen. It can appear as bird-like and attacks at night. The Myling version is said to be spectral, but will jump onto people's backs and demand that they are taken to the graveyard to be buried. As the child clings to the person, they will grow heavier and heavier until it crushes the person and forces them into the ground. This is actually very similar to the Japanese version, the Kanaki Jiji. Their power comes from the lost potential of their early demise. For many families, a pregnancy is a stressful event, leading up to the birth of a precious child. But sadly, all too often, the child will not live to see their first year. In medieval Europe, the infant death rate was about 200 or 300 deaths out of every 1,000 births, so about 25%. Much is due to what is now easily treatable conditions and hygiene that wasn't available then. Now, when conditions in the house weren't great, with too many mouths to feed or famine present, a woman may try to find an angel maker, someone who takes the child for a few coins and is supposed to find someone to adopt the child, but instead they usually just drown or abandon the baby. Sadly, this has led to a menagerie of mythical creatures. For many of you, your first encounter comes from the Witcher 3 game, where you dealt with the Botchling. There are a few origins of such creatures. Some say that they are the stillborn child, sad infants which perish before even their first breath. Others speak of them when the child was not buried properly and baptized. Now, their behaviors aren't like a sweet and helpless baby, but are malicious. They are parasitic, often targeting pregnant women, including their mother. They will drain their strength, leaving them weak, putting their life in danger. To put it at ease, the remains of the child need to be buried at the threshold of the house. When done so, it will become a klubak, also called a lubberkin. As such, it will become a protective spirit, or goblin, which will protect the household. It is a rather dark creature, wouldn't you agree? So what is it? Why has the baby become such an evil creature? Well, it seems to be some form of undead. In particular, a variant of a vampire seems most accurate, but not perfect. It is in a spectral form. As to why it acts this way, it is the parent's job to protect and tend to their child's needs, and an improper burial is not taking care of a child. Now, in the womb, babies are dependent on their mother. They absorb nutrients and oxygen from their mother, even displacing their mother's organ positions. This also leads to feedback to the mother, which leads to a variety of other changes in her body until she is ready to give birth. Now, if the baby dies before birth, it hasn't matured from its developmental stage, and it continues to seek support from its mother. But why would it drain the strength from other women? Well, newborns will breastfeed from any woman who offers. Have you ever heard of a wet nurse? A woman who is paid to breastfeed a noble's baby, or if the mother dies. So, our botchling is seeking sustenance off any woman, but pregnant women would mirror the environment it was developing in until it died. So, an ideal target. Why is the burial so important? What caused it? I mentioned it being vampire-like, but that isn't a perfect answer. Most forms of vampires have an outside force which creates them, be it a succubus or a demon, or other dark forces. What about the Botchling? Baptism is meant to mark a person as God's child, but it isn't an exorcism. The other tales speak of the infants being improperly buried, just thrown out in a ditch or left in the woods. The last was a common practice in the ancient world, sadly. Well, I don't see anything that would speak of outside influences, but plenty of inside influences. Remorse, regret, vengeance are all things that the baby could feel. So partially, the Botchling is a malicious spirit, born of neglect and the desire for retribution against its parents and others in the community. The vampiric behavior may mean that the Botchling isn't stable and needs to feed to sustain its existence. This reinforces the idea of a spectral creature, a malicious ghost. But how does the Myling version gain weight? Possibly it is a faux weight, more of you getting weaker as it drains your strength. That is also why it is easy to put it at rest. Simply burying it at the threshold of your home is enough to put it at ease, bringing it inside with its lost family. Place where the love it never felt is present. Yet at the threshold of the house isn't the best place. It is a place that is constantly walked over. So in concept, it could be seen as insulting to the Botchling. In symbology, the threshold is a place which separates the physical and spiritual worlds. It is a place where one's mindset can shift. It is symbolic for a change in your life, from single to married, from a couple to a family, becoming a mother and father. In that concept, it is the perfect place for the Botchling. It is a failed transition in the life of the family, and a transformation as you bring the lost child back into the family as a new role. But for the Botchling, it is a transition of its own, from a menace to a protector. How do you protect yourself from a Botchling? If it is your family, it is mostly preventive measures. If you have a child, be sure to baptize them after birth. But more importantly, if they sadly perish, be sure that they receive a proper burial. But if it is another family's child that perished, things get difficult. Converse with your neighbors and watch for any who have recently lost a child. Listen to what happened to their child and where they deposited the remains. From there, you can work to retrieve and cleanse them. Different texts speak of rituals and rites to be performed to cleanse the remains. This will often involve naming the deceased child. Most require the aid of a priest or a cleric to complete. But how do you defend your family against the Botchling? It is stealthy. I mean, it is physically just a malformed baby. It has no fangs, claws, or surprise attacks, no great strength, and it can barely walk. So how does it attack? Stealth, that is all it has. It will need to sneak into the house or ambush the woman while traveling around town. Regardless, chances are it will need to be able to turn invisible and perhaps fly. Both open up mobility. What the range it needs to drain life and blood isn't specified, but a minimum would be touch. Since it is referred to as an attack as a bird, flight is likely, but no wings would work, so its power of flight must be born from its spiritual aspect rather than physical traits. When being fed on, the woman will feel fatigued, disrupted sleep, and lethargy. The chance of death only comes from prolonged exposure. How do we combat it? As a form of undead, it is weak to holy magic, particularly if you can create protective barriers. Something to keep it off you. If it can't touch you, you're safe. As for weapons, this thing isn't physically a baby, but a ghost. Swinging normal weapons won't do much, but a spectral blade may bring it harm. Above all else, magic will be your ally. If the Myling version grabs your back, it will not leave until it reaches a graveyard, and someone performs the last rites. But they attack those that are alone. So if you are in a group, you are safe. Perhaps having a copy of the scripture and reciting it could free you from the Myling. But it won't resolve the issue. The Myling will still exist. Well, what happens if a child is lost, but you can't find out whose family it belongs to, let alone can't find the remains? Can you still put the Botchling at ease? If it jumps on your back, it is easy. But if it takes a bird-like form and swoops down, and hit and runs, then it'll be harder. You'll need to find the remains before dealing with it. You'll need to search for them, bring hounds that are looking for the baby. Chances are that the remains may be left near the river or in the woods. Good luck finding them. Doubly so if scavengers are in the area. They might eat and scatter the remains. It may end up being impossible to find the remains to bury them properly. Perhaps a cleric could still perform the last rites without the remains. It'll be difficult, but might be your last resort. Now, in a fancy setting, it creates concerns. Clerics and priests will be charged with handling such creatures. The local priest will need to watch for the deaths in the community and be sure to aid in the burial of any child. This would become a community organized event to ensure the safety of others and proper burials. The Botchling, Poroniec, and Mylings are an insidious group of creatures. While their appearance is that of a child, they are far more dangerous. The power comes from the potential that is never realized due to their life being cut off by a premature death. Their parasitic nature drains the strength of others to sustain itself. And that is why I'm giving these 3 monstrous babies a 2 of 10 for difficulty. They are easiest to stop before they form. When a Botchling is purified and laid to rest, it becomes a Lubakin or Klobok. These creatures are benefactors of their family. They promote health and wealth for the family. In this way, the curse of the Botchling becomes a blessing. It will often take the form of a wet hen or rooster, sometimes as a crow or black cat. It is sometimes called the Lubberfiend, and is listed as a type of goblin, more akin to brownies and other beneficial goblins. Gaining the aid of such creatures can turn the horrible event of losing a newborn baby and turn it into a blessing which protects the family for the future. The Lubakin can aid in warding off other malicious spirits. They become an unseen part of your family, someone whose presence remains even if they never get to live. He watched his family, the Lubberkin did. They had been kind to him in the short while that he lived. But that was not to be. Under the difficult times, many were lost, including himself. He died and was lost, all thanks to that monster. Still, his parents found him, dead, but still they welcomed him inside. They kept him close, a family. He smiled at his brother. He would protect him. The same fate would not befall him. Never again. That he swore to his family that he could never touch, but still held him dear. The Botchling, the Poroniec, and the Myling, and a list of other names all describe these creatures. The loss of a child is devastating, but despite the family's pain, the child cannot be allowed to suffer and needs to be given a proper burial so that it may rest. If you fail your child, it can become a blight upon your family and the community. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please return next week, where we shall look at the Tooth Fairy. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.